Okay. I'll cut out this mark at the front. All right, so for our PLC today, we're going to talk about the positive behavior plan system that I implemented in my classroom. So, what we're going to accomplish today is our goal for 20 minutes is what our goal is, so what our vision is for what we want to accomplish, identifying the problem, our resource article, just back up to support what our plan is, an intervention and a modification to the intervention. So you'll see in a little bit, the first week and a half or so, I had my first intervention, and then the last week and a half, I did a modified intervention on that. Analyzing our data and our next steps to bring it to the rest of our school. So what is our goal? Our goal is to create a positive learning environment that allows all students the opportunity to learn to the best of their ability. And we want our students to be respectful, responsible, and responsive in and out of our classroom. So the reason I chose to do this PLC is because I know many of us have some disruptive students in our classrooms this year for no reason other than the fact that students obviously all learn differently and act differently. And so I really wanted to take an intervention that was going to address more behavior issues rather than academic, in the hopes that by handling the behavior in a more positive way, their academics would increase and become more successful. So what's the problem? So what we're seeing in our classrooms, at least in mine so far, has been lots of calling out, long transition times, negative student-student interactions, just not being able to handle interacting with one another, and negative teacher-student interactions. So that could be even arguing and kind of giving that negative attitude a status in our classrooms and encouraging them in a way to act negatively because we're not handling it properly. So a lot of the blame isn't really on the students, it can sometimes be on us. And acting out, just different ways of acting out in our classrooms. Our goal, so at the end of this, we want to have more participation from our students, more patience, quick transition times. I don't know about you guys, but I do not like waiting 8 to 10 minutes to clean up for recess, or 8 to 10 minutes to switch from reading to spelling. It gets a little ridiculous. Effective conflict resolution and empathy. Definitely in our classroom, or my classroom for the last 3 weeks, we've been working on empathy, just being able to say, do you understand why that person was upset with you, and why was that, and how can you address that? If you felt that way, how would you feel? Especially with being elementary, it's nice to focus on that. Mutual respect between student and teacher, because again, the blame's not just on the students, it's a little bit on us. And self-control, just being able to self-regulate and being able to say, I need to stop what I'm doing and change my behavior so that we can accomplish this, or so that I don't get in more trouble. So the article that I found, which is connected here, we'll pull it up, is a research brief. It's called Assessing Social Validity of School-Wide Positive Behavior Support Plans, the evidence for the reliability in the structure of the primary intervention rating scale, which sounds pretty crazy. But I kind of made it shorter for us here, and to see that the article concluded that there's a significant positive relation between social aspects of the classroom and treatment and integrity in the classroom. So it states by targeting more appropriate goals, so setting goals that are appropriate for our students, not necessarily expecting a second grader to be at a 5th grade level when it comes to behavior and academics, like understanding the age and where they are in their social world, I guess. Including more feasible procedures, so instead of giving them 4 procedures that they need to follow after reading time, we may give them 2 because they're younger. Or if they're older, maybe they need more to stay out of trouble and stay out of that disruptive behavior. And anticipating desired outcomes. For us, the outcomes was the big thing in my classroom for the last 3 weeks. I found that when I told them what I wanted their outcomes to be, they reacted in a more, I wouldn't say negative, but they kind of more so were like, well, that's the outcome you want. It wasn't necessarily the outcome they wanted. So we started on Mondays talking about our goals for the week, where we wanted to be in each subject, where we wanted to be socially, where we wanted to be improving upon from the week before. And when they were able to decide on the outcomes, which were kind of formed by our conversation, which I led, they kind of felt more ownership of it, so they were able to push past those things would have kept them kind of standing in the background and not really fully participating in what our outcome should be. And it shows that by doing those three things, you can increase the success of a positive behavior system in your school, and ultimately it improves their academics too, because it's less behavior time that you're dealing with and more academics. And the article corresponds with our positive behavior plan in terms of giving explicit expectations, so the students know what their expectation is, and they know in general what their goal is. Requiring trust between the student and the teacher, so they know, like, if they go against that expectation, they know exactly what the consequence is going to be. There's no guessing. They're not like sitting there thinking like, oh, maybe you'll have to write an apology letter. It's more like, if this is what you do, here's the consequence. And that really develops trust, because they know, if I lie, here's what the consequence is going to be. It's not going to be any worse. It's not going to be any less, but it's going to be exactly what she said. So they know exactly what to expect. And creating a positive learning environment in general. So what can we do in our classroom? This is the more exciting stuff. These are the three things that I focused on in my classroom, because there is a ton of articles and information on positive behavior systems, and it's overwhelming. There's no way you can do all of them in a classroom. It's impossible. So I liked focusing on just three things that I thought would really be beneficial for my students at their grade level. So with Lizzie being 5th grade, she might want to add a few more, and with kindergarten, you might want to add just one or two, just to kind of bring it down to the student's level where they need to be. So the three things that we recognized was not recognizing bad behavior. In our classroom, we didn't give bad behavior a status. If somebody is acting out, I ignored it. There's other ways to handle it, which we'll talk about in a minute. On the opposite end of that, there was a whole aspect of positive language and recognizing good behavior. So that would be me saying, like, thank you, Michelle, for sitting up straight and listening, and your eyes are on me, and thank you, Carrie, for doing the exact same. Students know, like, oh, that's the expectation. I'm going to follow it. I heard her say it. Whereas little whoever's sitting in the corner is doing a bad behavior, you're not necessarily going to address it right away, but by addressing the good ones, the bad ones are going to kind of start disappearing, or at least that's the hope. And kind of the backbone of all this is why I put it in the middle, is a tally mark system. So I have a little clipboard. I like a little one because the big ones end up whacking somebody in the head with them or something. Not on purpose. I have a little clipboard, and it just has their names on it. And the students never see this clipboard, but it's a tally mark system. So this is tally marks for students who are not following the expectations, and I'll go over this in a little bit more later. So first, which was the one that what really drew me to the positive behavior plan, was disarming the negative behaviors in our classroom. So there's three ways that you can do it. You can ignore the behavior completely, which works really well in my classroom, because at 2nd grade level they know what the expectation is usually. So they know, like, if I'm ignoring their behavior and calling out other people for their good behavior, they're going to change it. For younger and sometimes older, offering a positive alternative or changing the focus of the behavior can be a good thing. So an example of that could be if little Johnny is in the corner and he is screaming and shouting and whatnot, you can give them something like this instead. You can say, I want you to hold on to this. If it hits the floor, there will be even worse consequence, but I want you to stare at it for 3 minutes, or until the beads go up and down 4 times. Just something very simple that's changing that negative behavior, giving them something positive to do, but also something that's going to get that energy out, and something else. Now this might not necessarily work for everybody. I've seen it done with stickers, where they're giving a different alternative to that negative behavior. And it's kind of tricky. It's kind of based on students. You have to realize what they enjoy, what they like. I know some kids in my class really like the iPad. So if I see a negative thing that I'm ignoring at first, later on I might say, hey, you need to write an apology letter on the iPad. So it's still a positive thing, but they're taking that negative behavior and they're doing a positive alternative to address it. I really like the apology notes because I think it's good for them to feel empathy towards other people and everything. So I started a few things down here, just some things I thought were important. not giving bad behaviors a status in our classroom, so never addressing them. I don't want to let them know that by doing that bad behavior, I'm going to say your name, I'm going to look at you, I'm going to stop what you're doing, and everyone else is going to stare at you. Because most of the time they want that. Do not allow arguments to start between you and the student. That one's tricky, because of course you have those students who will say, well, I don't get it, I don't even know what you mean. And all of a sudden, right then and there, if you're answering back, explaining something a second time, you're arguing with them. It doesn't sound like an argument, because in their mind, they're thinking, hey, she is now engaging in this argument. We're going to go back and forth until she either changes her mind or something else happens. So not even addressing those tiny little arguments where you know they understand something, and you're going to continue going back and forth explaining, and them saying they don't get it, explaining, them saying they don't get it. It's just an endless cycle. So not even starting that in the first place. There's a big aspect of respect to that. You don't want them to feel like, hey, I can walk all over her or anything like that, because they know. When you say no, you mean no. When you say yes, you mean yes. And finally, not reprimanding any student publicly. Again, a very difficult thing to do, because obviously when you're up here teaching or doing something, you don't want to be like, Beth, sit down, stop talking, I'm teaching. Because right then and there, you're going to lose half the kids in your classroom, because now all their attention is focused on Beth, who is doing something that you don't want her to do. Instead, you can do simple things such as walking over and being like tapping on their desk, or asking them to stand up and pointing to where they need to go. But you need to have those like in place before you try to do it. So let's say you had Michelle who keeps acting out. And if I snap my fingers near you, you're standing up, you're walking, and you're standing in a square for a few minutes until you can calm down and join the rest of the class. I don't have to say anything to her. I'm not addressing it publicly. I'm simply going over. We had already communicated before as a consequence, and they're going and doing something right away. On top of that, the positive language comes into like a big, big key aspect of that. Positive language and recognizing positive behaviors are a key to a successful classroom. We can do this by recognizing students who follow expectations immediately. I do this every day. If I see we're supposed to be lining up with our coat zipped on, I will automatically call out 2 students for doing it. I'll say, Johnny, thank you for getting in line quietly, you're facing the right way, and Evan, thank you for zipping up your coat, and oh look, your shoes are tied, that's awesome, I needed your shoes to be tied. And automatically those students feel accomplished, they feel confident in their ability to follow the expectations, and they're ready to go. And the students around that want you to say their names. So even if they act like, oh, I don't really care, most likely as soon as you give them a compliment, you'll notice that they're doing things, and they'll even be like, hey, Mrs. Ludwig, tied my shoes today. Even if they're the worst kid in the world, they're totally going to do it. You can also notice and acknowledge students' accomplishments and strengths no matter how small. This is a big one for me because I find that with students who are more strategic, you can tend to be like, that's wrong, this is wrong, that's wrong, this is wrong. Instead, you could be like, Lizzie, you wrote your name perfect today. Yeah, every question on her paper might be wrong, but she wrote her name perfect today. And so by her feeling like, hey, I can accomplish that, and they're going to recognize that I wrote my name perfect. Everything was right where it needed to be. It was beautiful. And I saw it, and I noticed it, and I said it, and they're going to feel that confidence rise within them, and they're going to want to accomplish even more than just that. So rather than necessarily focusing on all the negative things, which occasionally you need to focus on a few of those issues, especially academic ones, just noticing those tiny little things. I'll even notice people who will zip up their zipper bag and put it where it belongs right after our intervention blocks, and I'll say, that's awesome. Yeah, you might have been disruptive in intervention blocks, but you were the first person to put that pencil bag in your desk where it belongs. Just tiny little things. And then also, encouraging an optimistic mindset. Just always letting them know that no matter if they fail, or no matter if they're getting in trouble, there's always a second chance. There's always a chance to redeem themselves. It's never going to be, that's it, you're done, get out of here. It's a chance to say, hey, you can make a mistake, mistakes are fine, but we have to fix it. So always being optimistic. One of the books that I read by Shalloway said that you should always send this message to your students. You are a good person, worthy of self-respect, and capable of self-discipline. And of course, that's going to look different in every single classroom. But I think if us as teachers can read that and understand it, we can kind of change it to be at the level of our students and just say, hey, you did a bad thing, but you're still a good person. Don't be down on yourself because you need to have self-respect. And you can do better without me always telling you to. You're able to do it. And the backbone to all of this, there's a lot of words on this, but I'll explain it simpler, is that tally mark chart that I was talking about. So you always want to start with a clipboard, and I just started walking around with it until they got interested in it. I didn't even write on it at first. I just walked around always holding the clipboard, and it got to the point where everybody was asking me, what's the clipboard for? Why are you carrying it? What's the pencil for? Like, is there a paper on there? I thought I saw my name on there when you sat it down. Very concerned. So I actually waited probably a half a day to even talk about it, but yet I held it everywhere, everything I did. I taught with it. We went to interventions with it. I went down and walked down to lunch with it at some times. And of course, you don't have to take it with you everywhere eventually, but at first it's nice to do that. So I discussed with my students after they started asking about it that this was a clipboard, and I said that here are expectations. So we talked about expectations for our daily routines, when we were doing independent work, when we were lining up, going down to the bathroom. Of course, you don't have to talk about all of them in one day because they'll sit up there like deer in the headlights. What? But one thing at a time. And we decided on a consequence together for any student who had more than 3 tally marks. Of course, you can make this 4, 5, 6, or 1 or 2. And I did it for at the end of each week. They needed to have less than 3. You could do a daily one, if especially you have a rowdy class. You could do a weekly one that has more tally marks. And the consequence, of course, should be discussed as a class beforehand so that they feel ownership of it. They know what to expect. It's not going to be surprising to them. They're not going to pout in the corner and boo-hoo. It is what it is. So for the tally marks, which you can see I have some tally marks on here already from this week. Not too many though. But for the tally marks, before you ever give somebody a tally mark, you always have to recognize 2 students, at least, for following the expectation completely. So I never just stand up here and start looking around and give tally marks out like crazy. Instead, I might stand up here for a minute, and people start getting your attention. They'll look at you, especially the ones who are following expectations, and then I would scream out, not scream, I would say out loud those certain things like, Beth is sitting up straight, she's on her bottom, she's ready to work, she's holding her pencil, she's good to go. And then I would look around again, maybe for another second, because now they're starting to realize somebody's looking at them, so they're going to start behaving. And then I'd say, Erin, she has her feet on the ground too, and she has her paper pulled out of her book. That is exactly the expectation for when we're ready for reading. And at that point, if the students aren't all doing that, you can start giving out tally marks. And I tell you what, as soon as they see that pen go up, it's like dead silence. They don't mind at all. But you have to recognize 2 students or else it's not going to work. You're just going to stand up here all day giving out tally marks, waiting 5 minutes till everyone's quiet because they're scared to death if they got a tally mark next to their name. So always recognizing 2. This is one of the things I found important. And a lot of people would probably want to show their kids the clipboard. I don't. I like the whole fact that they're very curious to know how many they have. I might give slight warnings like, hey, you're getting kind of close to not being able to do something at the end of the week that's fun. So you might want to start thinking about it. But I never let them see how many they have. In my mind, the curiosity is what is definitely like enticing for them. It's like a game, like, how many do I have? Like, do I have any? Maybe I have 3 and I'm already out. I don't know, maybe I only have 2, so I better behave. So I enjoy keeping it private. It's for me to see. I mean, this is like the holy grail. If I set it down here to help somebody, you better believe there's at least 3 people going to slowly walk by like, thinking I don't notice. But it's enticing. It's like a game for them in a way too. So if you want to keep it public, I wouldn't recognize it that or suggest that necessarily because it is giving that negative attention a name. Kids are going to see their name on that thing and they're going to see a tally mark next to it. So it's already drawing attention to that negative activity. Whereas if you keep it private, it's still a positive thing because it's more like a game in their mind. Whereas for us, we can make it as specific as you want. And I'll tell you, mine is more simple now, but when I was started off, it was a little bit more in depth. Yes.
Can you get from good behavior if what they received the tally mark for and then later in the week they started improving? Can you take
take the tally mark away. I didn't. Especially now, I might start doing that. I didn't at first just because they earned it in the first place. But if you have somebody who gets quite a few tally marks and you wanted to tell them how many they have, they can redeem themselves. Again, that's whole bringing it back to being like a good person. You're able to have self-discipline and bring it back. So that's definitely something you can do. I just chose not to do it because in the first place they earned it, and I figured you earned it on Monday. On Tuesday you did great, but Monday still didn't disappear, it's still there. But you can do it either way. I think redeeming themselves is a good thing. And for the modified intervention, so this was after week 1. Week 1 I just had, there's a consequence on Friday. They had to write apology letters. That was their consequence. They had to do that before they had their afternoon recess. And I found that that was also a really big negative. And with it being a positive behavior plan, I didn't want it to be completely surrounded by this big consequence at the end of the week, which sometimes they lost a few minutes of recess, they didn't get their gumball Friday, certain little things. And I found that it was really negative, and those students were really like, oh, like, that's a really negative consequence, and this is a positive behavior plan. So instead of having a negative consequence, I modified the intervention to have a positive award at the end. So on Monday, all of us together, students and me, we all chose a fun activity to do on Friday. I let them choose. I always picked 3 people out of my popsicle sticks, and if those 3 people had an idea, I would write them down. So an idea was painting on Friday. One of the ideas was a science experiment. Another idea was extra 5 minutes of recess. And so we would vote on it, which we got to take out our ballot box and do all that fun stuff. So they feel like, oh, as a class we chose this. It's not always me choosing for them, which is a really positive thing. And if they earned less than 3 tally marks, they earned it. Now, if they didn't get 3 tally marks, they had to sit out during the fun activity, which wasn't negative consequence, but they feel like they earned it. They're learning during that. But they also still got to help vote for the next week's activity. So even those students who were sitting out still got a positive thing with the fact that they weren't left out of choosing for the next week. So I would have a conversation with them like, here's the reasons why you didn't get to do the fun activity, but you get to help us vote for next week. So if you change these few things for next week, look, you'll earn the next fun thing that we're going to do. And for some reason, because they found that as a positive, they're totally okay with the consequence that you give them for sitting out. They'll sit there and they won't complain. They haven't pouted. They felt like they earned it because we created it together, and they're not upset because there's still something that they can look forward to, which is nice. The fun activities, like I said, painting, extra recess. Today we did the Kiva planks, whatever you feel is necessary. The science experiment was fun. We made fake snow. Painting was good. We made the heart, so they each got to paint a piece of the heart, which there was a lot more spaces I didn't realize I did. So just little tiny things. It doesn't take very long. I mean, I think this took like 15 minutes of students coming over and painting their piece, but for them it's like the best part of the week. It's the fun activity, and they chose it. So it's so super cool because it wasn't me. If I chose it, it probably wouldn't be as cool. So as I collected the data, I collected for call-outs, negative behavior, and talking during transitions. I just focused on those 3 because those were the 3 biggest issues in my classroom. So obviously you can tell from week 1 to week 2 was when we had the consequence on Friday, and it did go down pretty significantly from week 1 to week 2. And then week 3 is when I changed it, I modified it so that they were choosing a fun, positive activity at the end rather than a negative one. And so that was a big gap from the first week to the 3rd week. I mean, it went down a crazy amount, which was really nice. So 12 down to 3 or 5 or 4, whatever that says right there, 3. So it went down a lot, which was pretty impressive. Call-outs decreased by 45%, negative behavior by 40%, and talking during transitions by 35%. So the data definitely showed that all of those things decreased, which actually allowed for my students last week on their assessments to head over heels better than they have in the past. Even those students who have not done as well started to really, I feel like, get more of the information that we were teaching in class because there was less call-outs. They were able to raise their hand and answer a question or ask a question. The negative behavior decreased, so instead of spending 5 out of my 20 minutes for math calling people out for doing certain things, we were able to spend that 5 minutes letting kids come up to the board and doing activities. It cut down on all this time, so it allowed their academics to really rise. It was kind of neat to see. Let's see. So for the next steps for the intervention, I would really suggest implementing it at the beginning of the year. Of course, if you guys want to start it tomorrow, I know one of the girls actually in this class started hers last week, and she messaged me because she was looking over my PowerPoint before today, and she said that she saw a significant change in her students. So you can definitely start it now, but if we're going to start it as a school-wide program, I would suggest starting it at the beginning of the school year just to encourage right off the bat that positive behavior, positive language. You don't get a chance to get to the point where you want to pull your hair out as a teacher because now you're going to put the intervention in. Like just starting off from the beginning. Focusing on one expectation a week for the younger grades especially. Maybe just focus the first week on raising your hand. So you can explain, this week I'm putting tally marks for raising your hand. I'll tell 2 people, thank you for raising your hand. After that, you get a tally mark if you don't. Just an expectation, rather than overwhelming them with everything. And then finally, creating a list of school-appropriate fun activities. I always wanted to type them out and just put them in like a bucket or something so they can choose from them. Maybe have 2 that they choose from and vote on, rather than some crazy ideas like bring your pet to school day. Like, had to shut that one down, unfortunately. Or certain things like that. Just more appropriate school fun things so you're not spending too much time voting on them. So overall, these are the next steps that I would suggest for our school for next year, or even if you guys are going to implement it soon, just to kind of get that negative behavior out and that positive behavior in so that our assessments will start rising and our academics will rise and we'll have more patience and understanding for our students. And they'll have more patience and understanding for us because obviously we're not all perfect. So it's a nice system for both of us to make student and us a better person. Those are my resources. Do you guys have any questions? No?